Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into one of those tales where a soldier, three very strange dogs, and a box that makes fire somehow come together to change the course of an entire kingdom. The imagery here is straight out of a dream. Crooked witches lurking by hollow trees, coins stacked like pancakes in glowing chambers, and animals with eyes so big you'll question whether you've fallen asleep already. You probably won't survive this, at least not in the waking world. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, I'd love for you to drop a quick note in the comments telling me your location and what time it is where you are. It's always amazing to see this little bedtime community stretch across the whole planet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the road at twilight, the soles of your boots thin, the dust clinging like memories that don't want to let go. Behind you lies a war you never asked for, one that rewarded years of marching with little more than a dull ache in your shoulders and an empty purse rattling with a single coin. The world feels quiet now, too quiet, like someone has pressed pause on the noise of life. You let yourself imagine what comes next. Maybe a small cottage with a garden of onions and turnips. Maybe a jug of ale with friendly strangers. Maybe even a dog, though hopefully not one with eyes the size of your dinner plate. That image will make sense later. For now, you're just a tired soldier, hoping the road ahead has something kinder than the battlefield behind. Your boots scuff against the cobbles as you reach the edge of a village. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, carrying the smell of wood smoke and fresh bread. It's the kind of smell that makes you pause and breathe a little deeper, like your lungs want to hoard it for harder days. People glance at you with a mix of curiosity and politeness. A man with a patched hat nods, and a child tugs at his sleeve, whispering, "Is he a hero?" You can't help but smile. History books love heroes, but real soldiers mostly just want clean socks. Here's a little historical fact for you. In 19th century Europe, discharged soldiers often wandered town to town looking for work, since pensions were more rumor than reality. Folklore is full of these figures, men at the edge of society, carrying scars and stories in equal measure. Some tales paint them as tricksters, others as wanderers with unexpected destinies. Folklorists can't agree whether that reflects real social sympathy or just a storytelling device to set up magical encounters. Still, you feel that tension. Freedom, yes, but also uncertainty. You touch the hilt of your sword, worn but still yours, and it feels like the only insurance you own. Your feet carry you beyond the last cottage, into the dimming woods. Branches knit above your head, and you think of them as the original cathedral ceiling. No stained glass, just shifting light through leaves. A rustle makes you turn, half expecting an ambush, but it's only a hedgehog shuffling through the underbrush, muttering what you swear sounds like complaints about acorns. You laugh to yourself. Maybe you're more tired than you thought. The path bends toward an ancient tree, its trunk hollow, roots like giant knuckles punching through the earth. You pause. Something about it feels deliberate, as if the tree has been waiting. And in that pause, a voice rasps from the shadows. "Good evening, soldier." It's the kind of voice that sounds like old boots scraping on stone, worn, scratchy, and not particularly comforting. Out steps a bent figure draped in tattered shawls. A witch, you think, though the term feels both too simple and too dramatic. Let's call her a woman with an alarming amount of confidence in her posture. She says, "Empty pockets, isn't it?" Eyes twinkling as if she's been reading your bank statements. You start to answer, but she waves a crooked finger. "I know what you need. Riches, fortune, a way to never feel the weight of an empty purse again." You can't help but raise an eyebrow. Soldiers are used to being promised impossible things: victory, glory, decent food. But witches? They usually deliver, though not always in the way you'd like. Here's a little quirky tidbit for you. In old Danish versions of this tale, witches weren't always the villains. Sometimes they were gatekeepers to hidden treasure, half helpful and half threatening, a reflection of how rural communities saw wise women who lived on the margins. Historians still debate whether Andersen's witch was meant as a straightforward villain or a symbol of dangerous temptation. She croaks, "Follow me," and with surprising strength, she drags open the hollow of the great tree. Inside, steps spiral downward into glowing chambers. You peer in, half expecting to see bats or maybe an unpaid utility bill. Instead, you feel warmth, as if treasure itself is radiating up toward you. The witch smiles, or perhaps it's just her wrinkles rearranging. "Go down, soldier. You'll find riches. Only bring me one small thing in return." You hesitate because if stories have taught you anything, it's that witches never ask for just one small thing. But the thought of coins, food, maybe even a proper bed for the first time in months, it tugs at you. And with that tug, your hand grips the rough wooden rung of the ladder, ready to descend into the unknown. You glance once more at the woman, whose eyes gleam like lanterns. You can't shake the feeling she's smiling at more than just your fortune. The hollow swallows you as you step down, the world narrowing to wood, earth, and the promise of something peculiar waiting below. The ladder creaks beneath your boots as you descend, each step accompanied by the earthy scent of damp soil and the faint tick of dripping water. Your hand trails the rough bark of the tree's hollow, and you can't help but think it feels like sliding into the throat of some giant, slow-breathing creature. Romantic, right? Nothing says sweet dreams like crawling into nature's esophagus. Down below, the glow grows stronger, flickering with a yellow-orange warmth, as though someone forgot to blow out a candle centuries ago. At last, your boots land on packed earth, the chamber broad and low-ceilinged, lit by strange lanterns that look like oversized fireflies frozen in glass. The witch's voice echoes from above. "Straight ahead, soldier. There's the first chamber. Don't be afraid." Which is, of course, the least comforting thing anyone can say. It's like telling someone not to Google their symptoms. You shuffle forward, and there it is, a squat wooden door bound with rusty iron. You press against it, and with a groan like an old man standing from a chair, it swings inward. And there, sprawled across the chamber floor, is a dog, a perfectly ordinary dog, except for one detail. Its eyes. They're round and glossy, as wide as teacups, blinking at you with the polite but unnerving calm of a librarian who knows exactly how late your book is. The hound's body is mottled brown, its paws the size of shovels, yet it doesn't move, only watches, as though waiting for you to acknowledge the absurdity of its ocular real estate. On the floor around it lies a scatter of copper coins, more than you've ever seen. The room smells faintly metallic, like old pennies and rain-soaked iron. You crouch, your soldier's instincts reminding you that animals this unusual usually have sharp teeth to match. "Well," you whisper, "guess someone's been hoarding spare change." And here's the folkloric fact for this bit. In Scandinavian tales, treasure is often guarded by animals with exaggerated features. Big eyes, in particular, symbolized vigilance. Nothing slips past a creature with saucer eyes. Scholars argue whether Andersen's giant-eyed dogs were drawn from this tradition or invented purely for shock value. Personally, I think he just wanted kids to yell, "Wait, what?" before bedtime. The witch's voice drifts faintly down the hollow. "Don't be shy. Take what you can carry." You hesitate. Superstition prickles at the back of your neck. But then again, superstition doesn't buy hot meals or fresh boots. You step into the chamber, your boots crunching against copper. The dog's gaze follows you, slow and steady, as though it's silently filling out a customer survey about your intrusion. You scoop coins into your hands, then into your bag, until the weight makes your shoulders sag. Every handful feels both thrilling and oddly anticlimactic. Copper, not gold, not silver. Copper, like the kind kids might flip into fountains for wishes. Still, you're not about to complain. After all, how many fountains have ever coughed up their coins willingly? You risk a joke. Don't suppose you've got a change machine around here, do you? The dog blinks once. It's not amused. Or maybe it is. Hard to tell when your eyelids are the size of dessert plates. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some folklorists suggest these oversized eyes were a playful twist on the way dogs guard households at night. Their watchful gaze becomes literal, magnified to surreal proportions. Others claim it reflects children's fear of being stared at by animals in the dark. Either way, this hound feels less like a guard and more like the world's strangest accountant, silently tallying your haul. You sling the bag over your shoulder. The dog doesn't move, doesn't growl, doesn't even shift its weight. You half expect it to sigh and mutter, "Don't mind me, just doing my job." One last glance at the piles of copper. Enough remains to bury you alive if you want it, but you don't linger. Something about the dog's stillness convinces you that overstaying might complicate things. You step back into the passage, the bag clinking with coins that feel heavier with each step. And as you climb toward the next chamber, you can't help but think, if this is only the first hound, what in the world waits deeper down? The air cools and the walls seem smoother, less natural, more deliberate, like someone carved them with tools centuries ago. You notice faint symbols etched along the stone, spirals, crosses, shapes you don't recognize. Some historians argue these markings in old stories hinted at forgotten pagan rituals, while others think Anderson just threw in some spooky decor. Either way, you brush your fingers across the grooves, wondering who else once touched them, descending with the same mix of hunger and hesitation. The witch's voice floats faintly again, thinner now, almost teasing. "Deeper, soldier, there's more waiting for you." And so, with copper coins rattling at your hip and the image of those unsettling teacup-sized eyes burned into your mind, you descend further, into a silence so deep it feels like the world above has ceased to exist. The passage winds like a corkscrew, your boots scuffing stone steps that seem older than memory itself. The air grows cooler, damp enough that droplets bead along the walls and leave your palms slick when you steady yourself. Your copper-filled bag jingles faintly at your hip, and in the hush of the descent, it sounds ridiculously loud, like you're a one-man marching band trying to sneak into a monastery. At last, you reach another door, taller and heavier than the first. The wood is dark, as though it has soaked up centuries of torch smoke, and the iron hinges look thick enough to withstand an elephant leaning casually against them. You press a shoulder against it. With a grunt and a groan, the door gives way. This chamber is wider, the ceiling higher, lit by a glow that feels silver instead of coppery. And sprawled across the flagstone floor is the second dog. Only calling this beast a dog feels like calling the sea a puddle. Its body is shaggy and massive, like a walking haystack, and its paws are so big they could probably serve breakfast on them. But again, it's the eyes. They're as large as dinner plates, glossy, luminous, reflecting your every movement like two round moons dragged down into the earth. The pupils expand and contract slowly, the way ripples spread across a pond when you toss in a pebble. And beneath those eyes, stacked in neat piles that almost sparkle, is silver. Coins, goblets, chains, platters, enough to cater an entire royal banquet and still have spare trinkets for the peasants. You mutter under your breath, "Well, someone's been shopping at medieval IKEA." The dog does not respond, which is either polite or ominous. You can't decide. Here's a neat historical aside. Silver was often more practical than gold in pre-industrial Europe. It was the standard for coinage, the measure of real wealth. Many old fairy tales treat silver as the middle treasure, less humble than copper, less lofty than gold, but solid, reliable, a step upward in fortune. Scholars sometimes argue that Andersen's use of silver here reflects Denmark's own reliance on silver trade in his era. Then again, some think he just liked shiny things. You take a tentative step inside, the silver gleaming so brightly it paints the chamber walls with pale light. The dog's eyes follow you, slow, steady, unblinking. You shift your bag of copper, and it clinks rudely like an off-key note in a choir. For a silly moment, you feel like apologizing to the dog. "Sorry, didn't mean to bring small change to a silver party." The hound's ears twitch, though its body stays motionless. You crouch, hands brushing over the cold coins, the smooth edges of goblets, the delicate etching on a chain. The temptation is immediate, fierce. A soldier could live 1,000 years on what's in this room, buy a house, 3 houses, an entire village with decent roofing. You think of the tavern in the village above, the smell of bread. You picture returning there with silver instead of copper, paying not just for ale, but the whole barrel, maybe the whole tavern itself. A little-known tidbit: in some variants of this folktale collected outside Andersen's Denmark, the second dog isn't described at all, just another hound larger than the first. The detailed descriptions of the enormous eyes may be Andersen's own creative addition, heightening the surreal humor. Folklorists debate whether children laughed more at the exaggeration or shivered at the uncanny imagery. You begin scooping silver into your bag, coins ringing as they strike the copper already there. The dog's eyes shift again, following the motion of your hands. It doesn't growl. It doesn't bare teeth. It just watches. If anything, the silence makes you more nervous than noise would. You find yourself whispering ridiculous reassurances. "Don't mind me, just tidying up. Silver really ought to be dusted more often, right?" Your bag swells with weight until your shoulder protests. You cinch it shut, glance once more at the endless piles that remain, and shake your head. No one could carry it all, not even the dog with its breakfast tray paws. As you turn toward the passage again, a shiver crawls along your spine. The dog has not moved an inch, yet you swear its eyes gleam brighter, as if it knows something you don't, something about the bargain you're walking deeper into. And so, clinking with silver, you slip back into the carved corridor. The air shifts, cooler still, carrying a faint metallic tang that tastes like coins pressed against your tongue. You wonder how far down this tree goes. If the first dog was copper, the second silver, well, you don't need a degree in folklore economics to guess what comes next. The witch's voice drifts again, thinner, mocking. "Deeper still, soldier. The greatest treasure awaits." And you descend, step after step, wondering not only what treasure lies below, but how much stranger the eyes of the third hound could possibly be. The steps grow steeper now, as if the earth itself is testing your resolve. Each descent feels heavier, not just from the swollen bag dragging at your shoulder, but from the silence thickening like wool in your ears. Even the clink of silver against copper seems swallowed up by the underground air, as though the world doesn't want anyone above to know what's happening below. At the bottom, another door waits. This one is the largest yet, carved from oak blackened by age, reinforced with iron bands thick as your arm. You press a hand against it, and for a moment you imagine it breathing back, a slow exhale of warm, metallic air. When it finally creaks open, you're bathed in a glow richer than firelight, brighter than moonlight. The chamber beyond gleams gold. Coins are stacked in towers that wobble precariously like children's building blocks. Crowns rest carelessly against goblets. Necklaces spill like streams of sunlight across the floor. The air hums faintly, as though the metal itself is singing a note you can only half hear. And sprawled in the center, like a god who couldn't be bothered to sit on a throne, is the third hound. Calling this beast enormous feels like an insult to enormous things everywhere. Its body stretches longer than a wagon, shoulders broad enough to make you feel like a mouse in a cathedral. But, of course, it's the eyes. They are vast, wider than windmill sails, glowing with a brilliance that reflects every flicker of gold in the chamber. When those eyes blink, the sound is like sheets of canvas snapping in a storm. You stand frozen, your soldier's instincts wrestling with the absurdity before you. You want to laugh, because who wouldn't laugh at a dog whose eyes could double as village ponds? But the sound catches in your throat. Joking too loudly in here feels like whistling in a church, and you're not sure this hound would appreciate humor. Still you mutter under your breath, "I'd hate to see what you consider a chew toy." The hound doesn't move. Its gaze follows, slow as a setting sun, as you edge closer to the treasure. Gold coins clink under your boots, and you bend to scoop them up, the weight immediately dragging at your arms. Every handful feels like scooping pieces of daylight itself. Here's the historical note tucked inside this moment. Gold, unlike copper or silver, wasn't just money in the 18th and 19th centuries. It was prestige, power, the divine metal. Kings wore it, priests used it in chalices, and folk tales almost always saved it for the climax of the journey. Some folklorists argue the three dogs here represent a symbolic ladder: poverty, copper; stability, silver; and ultimate power, gold. Others shrug and say Anderson probably just wanted to scale the treasure like a video game level up. As you fill your bag, a little voice nags in the back of your skull, not the witch's rasp, not your own doubt, but something deeper, an awareness that you're touching more than just wealth. Folklorists sometimes say gold in stories isn't just treasure, it's destiny, binding you to consequences you can't yet see. You keep shoveling anyway, because what else can you do? A hungry soldier doesn't debate destiny when faced with coins enough to build castles. Here's the quirky tidbit. In one rarely told Danish version, the third dog doesn't guard gold at all. It guards jewels, rubies and sapphires, spilling like fruit across the chamber. Anderson swapped them for gold, which scholars think made the story cleaner. But the debate continues. Jewels as personal beauty, gold as power. Which fate would you rather tempt? Your bag bulges dangerously, the seams groaning. You straighten, your shoulders already protesting. The dog's eyes blink again, a thunderous sound that echoes through the chamber. For a heartbeat, you swear the whole room shivers, gold towers rattling as though the hound's patience has a time limit. All right, you whisper, slinging the bag across your back. No need to glare. I'm leaving plenty for you. You gesture to the literal mountain range of gold still surrounding the beast. The dog doesn't react, but you imagine it rolling its colossal eyes, muttering, "Typical human, thinks I care about the pile." You retreat, boots crunching against scattered coins, careful not to make sudden movements, as though you're tiptoeing out of someone else's bedroom after waking the wrong roommate. When the heavy doors swing shut behind you, the air outside feels thinner, lighter. You lean against the damp stone wall, breath trembling. Copper, silver, gold, all yours. Yet all you can think of are those windmill eyes, watching with a patience that feels less like a guard dog and more like a prophecy waiting to unfold. Above, faint as a moth brushing past your ear, the witch's voice calls again. Remember the tinderbox, soldier. Remember the price. And with the treasures clinking at your hip, you start the climb upward, wondering what price she means and whether you've already begun to pay it.
The climb back toward daylight feels heavier than the descent ever did. Your bag strains at the seams, coins biting into your shoulder. Every step a reminder that wealth has weight, literal, back-aching weight. The witch's voice echoes faintly from above, her tone sharp with impatience. Well then, soldier, have you filled your purse? Did you find what I promised? You emerge from the hollow into the twilight, air cool and sharp in your lungs. The witch stands waiting, leaning on her crooked stick, eyes gleaming in a way that makes you wonder if she can see straight through the bag into every coin you carry. Hand me the tinderbox, she says, her tone casual, as though requesting a teaspoon of sugar. You pause. The tinderbox? Her smile crooks wider, wrinkled skin folding like parchment. Yes, the little box beside the treasure. Didn't you see it? And now your stomach twists, because no, you didn't. You were too distracted by the dogs, their ridiculous eyes, the piles of wealth that could keep you fed for 10 lifetimes. A tinderbox felt about as important as a rusty nail. She waves her hand sharply. Back down. Fetch it. I don't care about the coins, the silver, the gold. The tinderbox is what matters. Which, if we're being honest, is exactly the kind of line in a fairy tale that makes the audience whisper, uh-oh. Because no one ever demands something so small unless it's hiding catastrophic power. You hesitate. What's so special about a tinderbox? The witch's eyes narrow. That is not your question to ask. Bring it to me, now. Here's your folkloric fact for this moment. Tinderboxes were once essential. Before matches were invented in the 19th century, every household relied on them to strike sparks for fire. But in folklore, fire was more than warmth. It was magic, creation, even a fragment of divine power. Some scholars argue Andersen deliberately chose a tinderbox as the story's artifact because it symbolized mastery over life itself. Others debate whether he simply liked the practicality of an everyday object hiding world-changing secrets. Still, your instincts prickle. A soldier survives by listening to gut feelings, and your gut is shouting louder than a tavern brawl. This is no ordinary tinderbox. You shift your bag, coins clinking in protest. I'll need a moment, you mutter, though your voice wavers. The witch steps closer, her shawl rustling like dry leaves. Do not delay, boy. Bring it to me. There's a pause. The woods are silent except for your heartbeat. And in that silence, you realize something chilling. The witch doesn't care about your fortune at all. She knew exactly what she wanted from the start. You're just the poor fool sent to fetch it. Quirky tidbit. In some retellings outside Andersen's version, the soldier hands over the tinderbox immediately, and the story ends abruptly, with the witch victorious. Andersen flipped the script, giving his soldier the cunning edge, which may reflect the Romantic era's fascination with the underdog triumphing through wit rather than birthright. You glance back at the hollow tree, then at the witch's crooked smile. You imagine yourself descending again, retrieving the small wooden box from among the gold, only to place it in her wrinkled hands. And you picture the outcome. Not wealth, not fortune, but her laughter echoing while you're left with nothing. All right, you say slowly, I'll fetch it. You step closer to the tree, but your fingers tighten around your sword hilt. A soldier doesn't trust wars or witches, and you've stumbled into both. The witch leans forward eagerly, her shadow long in the dying light, and in that moment, you realize, whatever the tinderbox can do, it's something she can never be allowed to hold.
The air seems to still, the forest pausing to listen. A choice hangs before you, weightier than copper, silver, or gold, and your hand hovers, not toward the tree, but toward the weapon at your side. The witch leans closer, her crooked nose nearly brushing yours, her whisper sharp as a thorn. "Fetch it, soldier, the tinderbox, now." Your hand rests on your sword hilt, fingers tightening until your knuckles ache. The blade is old, dulled from years of service, but tonight it feels like the only honest thing you own. "I think," you say softly, "I'll keep what I've already found." The witch's eyes flash, not with fear but with fury, like embers stirred in a dying fire. "Foolish boy," she hisses, "the tinderbox is mine. Without it, your gold means nothing." And here's the quiet truth you've already guessed. No one demands a simple fire striker, unless it burns with something more than sparks. She lunges for your bag. Reflex takes over. You draw your sword in a single clumsy arc, the sound slicing the twilight. The blade flashes, there's a cry, sharp, piercing, cut short. Then silence. The witch crumples to the ground, her shawl folding around her like wilted leaves. For a long moment, you stand frozen, chest heaving, sword trembling in your grip. The woods around you do not stir. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. "Well," you mutter, voice hollow, "guess that's one way to end a business deal." It's the kind of gallows humor soldiers cling to, the kind that doesn't really land but keeps you from falling apart. Here's a historical note. In many fairy tales, witches symbolize temptation or forbidden power. Killing them isn't just an act of violence, it's a metaphor for seizing destiny. Folklorists argue endlessly whether Andersen intended this witch's death to be a moral warning or a cheeky endorsement of human greed. Still, the story's survival suggests audiences enjoyed watching a common soldier outwit and outlive an agent of the supernatural. Your eyes drift back to the hollow tree. Something tugs at you. The tinderbox is still down there, nestled among the gold, ignored in your scramble for coins. If it truly mattered that much to her, maybe it should matter to you. You sheathe your sword, the blade sliding home with a weary scrape. Then cautiously, you climb back down into the darkness. The chambers are unchanged. Copper coins, silver goblets, gold towers, and the great dogs watching with their impossible eyes. Only this time, you see it, the little wooden box, plain as bread crust, tucked between piles of treasure. You pick it up. It's light, unimpressive, small enough to fit in your palm. You flick it open. A scrap of flint gleams inside. Ordinary. Laughably ordinary. "Really?" you whisper. "All that fuss over a campfire starter?" The copper-eyed dog blinks. The silver-eyed dog sighs through its colossal nose. The gold-eyed dog shifts just slightly, as though amused. You get the distinct impression they know something you don't. You slip the tinderbox into your pocket, its weight negligible compared to the bag of coins, yet it feels heavier, stranger, like carrying around a riddle no one has told you yet. When you climb back to the surface, the witch's body lies still at the roots of the tree, her shadow already fading into the dusk. You stand over her, conflicted. Relief pricks at you, yes, but so does unease. Whatever she wanted, whatever this box is, it's yours now. And destiny rarely comes without a bill. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions of this story describe the witch as a sister of the underworld, hinting she wasn't just a greedy old woman, but a guardian of a magical threshold. Killing her might not have been clever so much as catastrophic. Folklorists argue endlessly, was the soldier triumphant, or did he unleash something he couldn't control? Either way, the night air feels different as you shoulder your bag. Riches jingle at your side, the tinderbox rests against your thigh, and the world suddenly feels both wider and more dangerous. You glance back at the hollow tree, dark and silent now, a final farewell to its secrets, to its peculiar guardians. Then you turn toward the road, wealth heavy on your back, an ordinary-looking box in your pocket, and a future that suddenly feels anything but ordinary.
The road stretches out beneath your boots, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you're walking without orders, without a commander barking your name. The jingling of coins in your sack gives you a steady rhythm, like some ridiculous marching band that only plays cha-ching, cha-ching. The towns you pass through are small, their cobblestone streets winding like tangled yarn. People glance at you, their eyes flicking from your worn soldier's coat to the heavy bag on your shoulder. You nod politely, trying to look like just another wary traveler, though you know you clink far too much for that disguise to last long. You rent a room at the first inn you find, its sign creaking in the wind, painted with a boar that looks more like a pig who's had a rough day. Inside, the inn smells of wood smoke, stewed cabbage, and the faint sweetness of cider. The innkeeper, a round man with a voice like a church bell, eyes your bag but doesn't comment. Instead, he welcomes you warmly and tells you the cider costs 2 copper pieces a mug. You slide him a silver coin. The man nearly faints, then treats you like a long-lost brother. It's funny how quickly generosity buys love. 1 round of drinks for the room, and suddenly you're everyone's favorite soldier. The fiddler tunes up, villagers slap your back, and someone even tries to braid your hair, though you swat their hands away, laughing. Here's the historical angle. Soldiers returning from war often found themselves either glorified or ignored, depending on how much money they brought home. In early European folklore, wealth was practically a personality upgrade. Without it, you were invisible. With it, you became unforgettable. And, in case you're wondering, no, this doesn't mean you're suddenly the hero of the century. You're more like a man with a very loud purse. But that purse is enough to buy comfort you haven't tasted in years. The bed upstairs creaks under your weight. Straw mattress uneven but heavenly compared to the frozen ground of campaigns past. You sleep hard, though not without dreams. In them, you see the witch's sharp eyes staring, the dogs blinking in their strange silence, and the little tinderbox glowing faintly like an ember waiting for air. Morning light wakes you. Birds outside chatter as though gossiping about your arrival. You rise, stretch, and count your coins. Still there, still ridiculous. You spend the next days testing your new wealth in subtle ways. A cloak of soft wool, a knife with a bone handle, fresh bread instead of the stale rations you used to choke down. Each purchase feels both thrilling and fragile, like balancing on a rope bridge. How long before it snaps? The tinderbox remains in your pocket. You've not struck it yet. Some part of you resists, as though lighting a fire with it would ignite more than wood. You tell yourself it's nonsense, just a scrap of flint, but your hand brushes against it often, reassured and wary at once. At the marketplace, you hear whispers about the royal court, a princess locked away, unseen by the common folk, a king, proud and cautious, fearful of prophecies. Stories swirl like smoke, that she's too beautiful to be trusted, that her marriage could topple kingdoms, that she dreams of a soldier she hasn't met yet. You chuckle at that last one. Folklore loves foreshadowing. Still, you can't help but wonder, why hide a princess? Here's a quirky tidbit.
In Danish tradition, fairy tales often wove politics into romance. Kings guarded their daughters not just for love, but because alliances could crumble if the wrong man caught their eye. Anderson loved hinting that destiny laughs at such plans. Folklorists still debate whether the princess in the Tinderbox represents youthful freedom or just another gilded cage. For now, you're content to let the whispers drift past. You have gold, you have cider, you have time. But in your pocket, the Tinderbox waits, light as air and heavy as fate. One evening, back at the inn, the fiddler strikes up a tune and villagers crowd around, pressing you for stories of war. You oblige with half-truths, a skirmish here, a campfire prank there. You leave out the mud, the screams, the witch in the hollow tree. Instead, you raise your mug, make them laugh, and lean into the warm glow of belonging. Yet even as laughter fills the room, you feel it, that quiet hum in your pocket, as though the Tinderbox itself is listening, waiting for the night when you finally decide to strike a spark.
Wealth, it turns out, is a marvelous disguise. You walk into towns as a ragged soldier and walk out as a gentleman, thanks to the jingle of coins and a smile that suggests you tip well. People straighten your cloak for you, press mugs into your hand, and whisper your name like you've become someone worth knowing. You can't help but laugh at the absurdity. Yesterday, you were eating stale crusts. Today, you're debating which shade of velvet best flatters your eyes. Spoiler? None. Velvet looks good on no one after 3 ciders. But the strangest thing happens when word of your generosity spreads. Suddenly, you aren't just the loud purse in the tavern. You're a guest at manor dinners, a partner in card games with men who never once wielded a sword, and, if you're honest, a little bored. Because here's the quiet truth. Wealth buys comfort, but it rarely buys meaning. You wake one morning in a feather bed so soft it nearly swallows you whole, and you think, not about the gold you still have or the wine you drank, but about the little Tinderbox, still untouched. It rests in your pocket like a secret you aren't sure you want to know. You toy with it one evening, thumb running over the smooth wood, the tiny hinge. What harm could a spark do? Fire is fire. Yet you remember the witch's fury, the way her eyes clung to it as though the gold itself were nothing. That kind of obsession doesn't come from campfire convenience. And so, one night, in your rented chambers, curiosity finally wins. You sit by the hearth, a candle flickering low, and you strike the flint inside the Tinderbox. The spark leaps. And then, the air shifts. A rumble shakes the room, low and guttural like thunder muffled beneath floorboards. You stumble back just as the copper-eyed hound appears, massive and absurd, eyes round as teacups glowing in the dimness. Its paws press into the wooden floor without sound, its breath fogging the glass of your window. "Your wish?" it rumbles, voice more felt in your ribs than heard. You gape. "Wish? I only lit a spark." The hound blinks slowly, as if to say, "Yes, and yet here we are." History moment. Many folk tales hinge on objects that seem ordinary but summon great forces. Rings, lamps, boxes, symbols of sudden, undeserved power. Scholars argue whether such items represent divine intervention or just the human dream of skipping the hard work. The Tinderbox, they say, is Andersen's sly nod to the lamp of Aladdin wrapped in Nordic flavor. You clear your throat. "All right then, bring me pastries. The good kind, not the rock-hard ones." And just like that, the hound vanishes, reappearing seconds later with an armful of flaky, buttery delights that smell faintly of almonds and scandal. You laugh so hard you nearly choke on the first bite. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some obscure versions of the story suggest these hounds can fetch anything, not just gold or food, but people. Folklorists debate whether Andersen softened or sharpened that detail. After all,
What's more dangerous than a loyal servant who doesn't know the difference between a loaf of bread and a living soul? You don't know that yet, though. For now, you're just a soldier turned gentleman, nibbling pastries delivered by a dog with dinner plate eyes. The tinderbox rests warm in your palm, power humming like a lullaby, whispering that this is only the beginning. And somewhere in the back of your mind, through the sugar and laughter, you wonder, if a spark can summon this, what might a flame unleash?
Power is a strange bedfellow. At first, it feels like a joke, summoning pastries with a spark, watching the copper-eyed hound pad silently through your chamber with its impossible paws. But like all jokes, the laugh fades, and what's left is the weight of possibility. If it can fetch sweets, what else might it fetch? One evening, as rain drums against the shutters and your wine tastes too sour to distract you, your thoughts drift back to the whispers. The princess no one is allowed to see. You picture her face, though you've never seen it. Half memory, half invention, cobbled together from tales and tavern gossip. Beauty hidden is beauty magnified. And against your better judgment, a question slips into your mind. Could the hound bring her? You stare at the tinderbox on your table. Your hand hesitates, then strikes the flint. A spark, a rumble. The copper-eyed hound looms again, patient, enormous, eyes glowing like lanterns. "Bring me," you say softly, "the princess." The room goes colder, as if even the hound knows you've crossed a line. Still, it bows its colossal head, and in the next breath, gone. You pace, heartbeat hammering. You curse yourself, laugh at yourself, wonder if this is treason, wonder if you care. And then the hound returns. In its jaws, carefully, tenderly, it carries not food, not treasure, but a young woman wrapped in velvet and moonlight. She is not afraid. Not yet. She seems half dreaming, her eyes fluttering open, catching yours for a fleeting second before the hound lays her gently on your bed. Time stops. You can hear your own breath louder than the storm outside. Here's the historical note. The abduction of women by supernatural or enchanted means is a recurring motif in folklore. From Hades and Persephone to the countless swan maiden tales, men often summon or steal women as though they were prizes. Modern readers bristle, rightly, but in Anderson's time, the motif was both thrilling and troubling. Was the soldier bold or simply reckless? Scholars argue still. You whisper, almost apologetic, "I only wanted to see you." She stirs, murmurs, then drifts back into slumber. You dare not wake her. Instead, you sit nearby, watching as if she were some painting smuggled from a gallery. Her breathing is soft, steady, utterly human, and that somehow makes it stranger than any hound. Minutes or hours pass before you strike the tinderbox again. The hound rises, scoops her back up, and vanishes into the storm. When silence returns, your room feels emptier than before. You sink into your chair, palms pressed to your face, equal parts exhilarated and horrified. Quirky tidbit. In some folk traditions, seeing a hidden royal was akin to glimpsing forbidden knowledge. It meant destiny had cracked open, and nothing would ever return to ordinary. You pour another glass of wine, though it doesn't calm you. The tinderbox sits on the table, plain and patient, as if daring you to strike it again. And in your chest, a dangerous thought smolders. Once is never enough.
Morning comes, but it feels different now. The market noise outside is too loud, the bread too bland, the laughter of villagers too ordinary. You've seen her. You've seen the princess they all whisper about but never glimpse. And that glimpse clings to you like perfume on a coat,
You can't shake it, no matter how hard you try. You walk through town square, coins jingling at your side, and every smiling face looks dim compared to hers. Wealth once thrilled you, but now it's just ballast, heavy and hollow. You buy pears from a vendor, polish one on your cloak, bite into it, and it tastes of nothing but absence. You toss it aside, feeling absurdly cheated. That evening, alone in your chambers, you finger the Tinderbox again. Your better judgment gives you a long, stern lecture. You ignore it. The spark flares, the rumble follows, and this time the silver-eyed hound appears, eyes like gleaming saucers. You whisper, "Bring her again." The hound bows, vanishes, reappears, and there she is, laid gently on your bed, breathing softly as if the night itself carried her here. This time you sit closer, speaking in a hush as though words might dissolve the spell. You don't know me, but I've known you in stories all my life. They say you're too precious to be seen. That makes you sound less like a woman and more like a locked jewel box. And that, well, that feels wrong. She stirs faintly, turns her head toward you, though her eyes do not fully open. For a heartbeat, you imagine she understands. Here's the historical angle. In Andersen's Denmark, royal daughters were symbols of both purity and politics. Fairy tales often poked at the absurdity of hiding them away, questioning whether such protection was love or control. Scholars argue the locked princess was Andersen's sly satire of power structures, romance disguised as rebellion. You reach out, not to touch her, but to adjust the blanket, tucking it beneath her chin, a ridiculous, tender act, as though you're some awkward host making sure a guest is comfortable. And then, as before, the hound returns her to the palace. But the king is not blind. The princess wakes the next morning, speaking of strange dreams, of a soldier's voice she half remembers, of warmth she cannot explain. Physicians are summoned, priests consulted, astrologers interrogated. Was it a vision? An omen? A trick of the moonlight? Quirky tidbit. In some early retellings, the king places seeds of barley in her pockets before she sleeps to see if the dream carries them away. In others, wax drips are set on her dress as markers. Folklorists still debate whether this detail came from Andersen or later collectors. It's the kind of half-magical surveillance parents have loved since immemorial. The next time you summon her, barley grains tumble from her cloak to your floor. The third time, flecks of wax remain on your bed. And you know, with the sinking weight of inevitability, that the king now has proof. You laugh bitterly to yourself, muttering, "Great, busted by pantry supplies and candle wax." Truly a soldier's downfall. The tinderbox rests on the table, innocent as ever. Outside, bells toll in the distance. They sound less like music and more like warning.
The bells don't stop. They seem to chase you from tavern to tavern, tolling in your skull even when the streets fall silent. You know why. The king has his proof. The princess has been leaving behind barley seeds and wax crumbs like a breadcrumb trail, straight to you. By day, you try to carry on. You stroll the market, toss coins to children, play the role of the generous gentleman. But eyes follow you more closely now. Guards linger near, their hands brushing hilts as you pass. The cider tastes sharper.
The air itself feels thinner, like the town has decided you're guilty and is simply waiting for your neck to catch up. At night, you pace your chamber. The tinderbox sits on the table, plain as ever, radiating possibility. You resist striking it. You tell yourself you'll stop, that summoning her was a fool's indulgence. But memory is a stubborn thing. Her face, half dreaming, is brighter than all the lamps in the town. And sure enough, the trap springs. One cold morning, boots thunder up the inn stairs. Your door bursts open, steel flashing. You reach for your sword out of habit, but know instantly you're outnumbered, 12 to 1. Your bag of gold clatters to the floor, coins scattering like traitors. By order of the king, the captain declares, you will stand trial for sorcery and theft of the princess. You could laugh. It sounds like a bad play. But your wrists are bound before the thought fully forms. The tinderbox. You glance at the table. It's still there, still yours. You lunge, almost make it, but a boot pins your hand. They drag you out, tinderbox left behind, your one true ally sitting like an abandoned toy. Historical note. Public trials for sorcery were rare by Anderson's era, but echoes of witch persecutions lingered in the cultural imagination. Folklorists suggest the soldier's trial is less about justice and more about theater, the king proving his power before the people. The streets swarm as you're marched to the square. Vendors pause mid-sale, children dart between legs for a better view, whispers ripple like wind through barley. You, the generous soldier, the man who bought cider for all, now bound and shamed. Someone spits. Someone else crosses themselves. You keep your chin high, but inside, your stomach knots. That night, locked in a stone cell, you joke aloud to no one. All right, that's what I get for mixing romance with burglary. The walls don't laugh, but the joke keeps your chest from caving in. The quirky tidbit: in some early broadsheet versions of this story, soldiers were explicitly warned not to meddle with royals. Tales like this functioned as cautionary parables. Yet audiences seemed to relish the soldier's audacity more than his downfall. Scholars argue whether Anderson intended the tinderbox to symbolize reckless desire or divine justice hiding in plain sight. You lie on the hard cot, staring at the ceiling, hands raw from rope. You wonder what the princess is doing this very moment. Does she remember you in the haze of those half-dreams? Or is she already convinced you're just a figment conjured by candlelight and gossip? And above all, you wondered if the tinderbox is truly lost.
The cell is colder than any battlefield ditch you've ever slept in. At least in war you had a fire, a blanket, or a comrade snoring to drown out the night. Here, there's only damp stone, the slow drip of water, and your own thoughts gnawing at you like rats. Morning comes with no breakfast, only the rattling of keys and the captain's grim face. Tomorrow at dawn, he says flatly. The gallows. It shouldn't surprise you. A soldier with no name, no patron, daring to meddle with a princess? The king couldn't script a better example. You nod, lips tight, pretending composure. Inside, your stomach flips like a fish on dry land. But fate enjoys its jokes. When the guard turns to leave, you call out, "One last request. Bring me my tinderbox. It's all I ask." He frowns, confused. A box of flint to light your own rope quicker? You shrug. A soldier's habit. Fire keeps the dark away. He laughs, shakes his head, but agrees. After all, what harm can a spark do to a condemned man? Historical aside, execution customs often allowed the condemned a final comfort, food, prayer, or a token object. Folklorists note this detail as Anderson's sly twist. The object granted isn't comfort, but power. Scholars still debate whether this loophole was a commentary on justice or pure narrative mischief. And so, hours later, The tinderbox sits once more in your hands, small and ordinary, its hinge creaking faintly. You turn it over, running your thumb along the wood. It's warm, though the cell is cold, almost as though it knows. That night, sleep evades you. You picture the dogs, the copper eyes, the silver saucers, the golden moons, their patience, their silent understanding. You whisper to the dark, "You'll come when I call, won't you?" The quirky tidbit. In some retellings, the dogs are said to be bound by bloodline, servants of whoever claims the tinderbox until the end of time. Others suggest they are fragments of fate itself, waiting only for the reckless to summon them. No scholar agrees, but they all nod at the same truth. Power unclaimed is power wasted. At dawn, the guards return. They haul you into the gray light of morning, wrists bound, rope waiting in the square. A crowd is gathered, murmuring, jostling for view. The gallows loom like crooked teeth against the sky. You walk steady, head high, tinderbox tucked in your coat. Every step feels louder than the last. The captain reads your crimes: sorcery, abduction, daring above station. The crowd boos. A child throws a crust of bread. You mutter, "At least it's fresh," earning a few startled laughs from those close enough to hear. The noose is slipped around your neck. The world seems to pause, the hush of expectation heavier than the rope itself. You close your eyes, breathe once, and whisper the only command that matters. The spark flares, the rumble answers, and the ground begins to shake.
The gallows creak above you, the rope tightening slightly as the hangman adjusts his knot. The crowd leans forward, eager for a show. Because let's be honest, public executions were the grim version of free theater. A butcher's boy balances on a barrel to get a better look. The baker wipes flour from his hands, not wanting to miss the moment. The king's herald clears his throat, about to read your sentence again, just in case the first round of humiliation didn't quite stick. And then the rumble deepens. It isn't thunder, though the sky is clear. It isn't drums, though it rattles bones and windows alike. It is the sound of pause, enormous pause. The copper-eyed hound arrives first, bounding into the square, its eyes glowing like two braziers snatched from a forge. Then the silver-eyed hound, taller than the rooftops, eyes shimmering like polished shields. And finally, the gold-eyed beast, vast as a tower, eyes glowing like moons, so bright the crowd shields their faces. Screams scatter through the square. Some run, some drop to their knees, some simply faint. The hangman drops his rope and bolts. The herald swallows his speech mid-sentence. Even the king himself, watching from his balcony, stumbles backward, crown tilting precariously. "Fetch," you murmur, almost laughing at the absurdity, and fetch they do. The copper-eyed hound snaps chains like thread, freeing your wrists. The silver-eyed hound plucks the gallows beam as if it were kindling, tossing it aside. The golden-eyed hound, that one bounds straight toward the palace. Its return is swift and dramatic, the king himself dangling from its jaws like a doll, crown tumbling into the dust. Historical note: in European folk tradition, reversal of power at the scaffold was a common fantasy. Tales of last-minute rescues by divine or magical means fed the hope that justice could be overturned when it became too cruel. Folklorists argue that Anderson leaned into this trope not just for drama, but for catharsis. What audience doesn't enjoy watching pompous rulers humbled? The crowd gasps, then cheers. Not all, of course, but enough to shift the tide. Yesterday, you were the villain. Today, you look like Destiny's favorite child. And what of the princess? The silver-eyed hound disappears again, returning with her, unharmed, still radiant in her bewilderment. She steps down from its enormous muzzle, her dress torn only slightly, her dignity intact. She looks at you, not as if you are a thief,
but as though you are the answer to a riddle she never meant to ask. Quirky tidbit: some versions of this tale skip the trial entirely, rushing straight to the soldier's victory, but Anderson lingered here, teasing out the drama of a public reckoning. Scholars argue that he wanted to highlight the precariousness of fortune, or simply knew his audience loved a good cliffhanger before the happy ending. The king, sputtering and red-faced, is set down none too gently by the golden-eyed hound. His robe is torn, his crown dented, his authority hanging by a thread thinner than the noose meant for you. You stand tall, brushing dust from your coat. "Looks like the trial is over," you say wryly, earning a ripple of laughter from the braver townsfolk. And in that moment, with the tinderbox warm in your hand and the hounds at your command, you realize the story has shifted. You are no longer the condemned. You are the one who decides what comes next.
The square is chaos, shouts, laughter, weeping, and the clatter of people either fleeing or rushing closer. The three hounds crouch around you like a living fortress, eyes glowing, breath steaming in the morning air. Their very presence bends the space, as if reality itself has agreed you're in charge now. The king staggers to his feet, robe askew, crown dented. He tries to speak, but the words die in his throat when the golden-eyed hound growls, a sound so deep it rattles the cobblestones. He raises a trembling hand, then lets it fall. Authority has slipped from him like sand through a sieve. The princess, however, stands steady. She moves toward you with a kind of grace that makes the crowd hush. "So," she says, voice low enough only you hear, "you're the one from my dreams." Your mouth goes dry. A soldier can fight armies, but a single sentence from a princess? That's a different battle entirely. You nod. "Guilty as charged." She smiles faintly, and that's all it takes. The people, watching closely, sense the shift. A murmur rises. If she accepts him, then maybe they should too. And just like that, loyalty tilts. Historical note: in fairy tale tradition, royal marriages often symbolize social upheaval. When a commoner marries into nobility, it signals not just love, but the overturning of rigid hierarchies. Anderson knew this, and he layered satire beneath romance. Folklorists still debate whether this was a wish-fulfillment fantasy or a jab at the absurdity of class barriers. The bishop is fetched, reluctantly, his ceremonial hat knocked sideways in the commotion. The townsfolk, swept up in the fever of spectacle, cry for a wedding on the spot. Why wait? After all, they've just witnessed magic, rebellion, and the kind of drama no sermon could ever top. And so, there in the square where you nearly lost your life, vows are spoken. You take her hand, still astonished she hasn't pulled it away. She looks into your eyes as if she recognizes something beyond gold or magic, something stubborn, foolish, maybe even kind. Quirky tidbit: some oral variants of this tale claim the hounds themselves barked approval during the ceremony, each woof shaking dust from the rafters. Scholars smile at this image, but note it highlights the dog's role as both guardians and witnesses, beasts who legitimized the union as much as any priest. The crowd cheers, the hounds howl, and you, once a nameless soldier with holes in your boots, now stand crowned by destiny's bizarre sense of humor. That night, the celebration spills into every street. Barrels of ale are rolled out, fiddlers play until their strings snap, and bonfires burn bright enough to shame the stars. You sit beside your new bride, the tinderbox resting in your pocket, its secret weight reminding you that all of this, every cheer, every vow, began with a single spark. You think, not without irony, a soldier's career has never taken a stranger turn. The palace corridors echo with laughter and music long after the torches should have burned out. You wander them hand in hand with the princess, no, your wife now, still marveling at how reality can turn inside out in a single day.
Silk banners flutter where once gallows rope swayed, and every glance from the servants carries awe, not suspicion. The hounds pad behind you, silent guardians. They seem almost pleased, as though their long wait has ended. The copper-eyed one nudges open doors for you, the silver-eyed one curls up in the hall to block intruders, and the golden-eyed one sits with a kingly air at the foot of your new throne, already acting as if it belongs to you. You think back to that first night in the witch's hollow tree, the smell of moss, the rattle of coins, the flick of a tinderbox lid. Every choice since then has carried you here, through smoke and near death, through trial and triumph. A modern aside crosses your mind. In another world, this would be the kind of rise people write clickbait articles about. Local soldier marries princess after summoning demon dogs. You'd scroll past it, shaking your head, convinced it was a hoax. And yet here you are, living the headline. Historical reflection. Andersen's The Tinderbox was one of his earliest published tales, rooted in older folk motifs of magical helpers and sudden fortune. Scholars debate whether it was a cautionary tale about greed, a satire of class, or simply a dream of overturning fate. What's clear is that its endurance lies in the strange, comforting idea that luck favors the bold, even the reckless. Quirky tidbit. Some folklorists note the dog's treasure isn't just gold, but time itself, that the saucers, chests, and coins symbolize cycles of wealth, waiting for whoever dares to claim them. Whether true or not, you can't shake the sense that these hounds carry more secrets than even they've shown. Later, when the revelry quiets, you slip onto the balcony. The city sleeps, soothed by the memory of spectacle. The air is cool, the stars burn steady, and the princess rests her head on your shoulder. You both stay silent for a long while, listening to the soft hum of a kingdom exhaling. You whisper to her, "Strange, isn't it? All from a box no bigger than my hand." She smiles, half asleep. Then keep it close. Sparks start more than fires. They start stories. And there, under the weight of stars and silence, you realize she's right. The tinderbox was never just flint and steel. It was the choice to reach for more, to risk, to light the darkness. The hounds settle at your feet, and you at last allow yourself to rest. No rope at your neck, no cell beneath you, only the odd, improbable comfort of a kingdom that has somehow become home. The story settles now, the way embers dim when the fire has burned long enough. You no longer stand in a crowded square, or on a balcony with stars stretched wide above you. Instead, you find yourself drifting in the quiet afterward, where the hounds curl like shadows at your feet, and the air is filled only with slow, steady breaths. Each detail that once felt sharp, the gallows rope, the clatter of coins, the tremble of a king's crown, softens now into something hazy, harmless, almost dreamlike. The dogs no longer guard or growl, they simply rest, their golden, silver, and copper eyes closing one by one. Even their heavy paws seem lighter, like clouds that have lost their weight. You breathe with them, in and out, in and out. Each breath smooths the rough edges of memory, easing you toward the same kind of stillness that blankets a kingdom after celebration, when even music fades to whispers. The princess leans against you, not as a royal figure, not as someone distant and untouchable, but simply as another soul sharing the same night. Her warmth is steady, her presence quiet, and it reminds you that even wild tales fold at last into silence. Your thoughts scatter like coins spilled across a stone floor. No need to gather them, no need to count. They can roll away one by one until there's nothing left but space and peace. The stars above your story fade softer too, dimming just enough that you no longer strain to see them. And as everything grows still, hounds, city, sky, you drift with it, carried gently as though the night itself has taken you by the hand. Sleep waits here, in the hush. Let it find you, let it find you, let it find you, let it find you.